Good evening and welcome to The Buck Stops Here. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. After meat and liquor bans is a curb on food portions now on the government's plate. Today, Food Minister Vilas Paswan said restaurants and hotels need to disclose and standardize food portions in order to crack down on wastage. Now asked whether this could be considered interference by the government, the Food Minister told NDTV this was actually in the interest of consumers, because if hotels and restaurants actually disclosed portions, then consumers would have better information with which to make their choices. In a recent edition of his monthly radio broadcast, Prime Minister Modi had expressed concern about food being wasted. He had urged citizens to fight the menace and the injustice. But as two BJP-ruled states, first Madhya Pradesh and now Chhattisgarh, today also talk about liquor prohibition in 2 days, we ask tonight, from food portions to liquor, is Big Brother watching?
जब हम लोग खाना खाने कहीं बाहर जाते हैं और वहाँ देखते हैं जो खाना की बर्बादी होती है, तो अपने गरीब मुल्क में जहाँ लोग भूखे रहते हैं और वहाँ खाना किस तरह की बर्बादी हो ठीक नहीं है, तो इसलिए हमने कंज्यूमर के इंटरेस्ट में क्या कहते हैं कि ये कदम उठाया है। प्रपोजल नहीं, हमने कहा कि इंडस्ट्री से पूछो कि स्वेच्छा से कर सकते हैं, किसके लिए कोई लीगल प्रोविजन बनाना पड़ेगा
कि कितना है, एक पीस चिकन या फिर
पीस है कि 2 पीस है, एक चपाती है कि 2 चपाती है, एक इडली है कि 2 इडली है।
और पासवान जी, अगर वो कहें कि सरकार हमें हर बात पे कंट्रोल कर रही है, ये भी बोल
नहीं, हम कंट्रोल नहीं करना चाहते, हम कंज्यूमर के इंटरेस्ट से करना चाहते। हम ये कहाँ कहते हैं कि तुम एक पोर्शन में तुम इतना ही रखो, हम तो इतना ही कहते हैं कि तुम लिख दो कि एक पोर्शन में कितना रहेगा। जैसे आप प्रॉन देते हैं तो आप कहिए कि साहब जैसे आपके चाइनीज होटल में जाते हैं प्रॉन देते हैं तो आपको लिख दीजिए कि एक क्या कहते हैं पोर्शन में 3 प्रॉन रहेगा या 4 प्रॉन रहेगा।
All right, joining us on our discussion tonight, Zorawar Kalra, celebrity chef and restaurateur. We're also hoping to be joined by Shaina NC, spokesperson for the BJP. She'll be with us shortly. Joining me here in the studio, Kuldeep Nar, founder of the Delhi Food Banking Network, and Anubhav Pal, stand-up comedian and writer, also joining us from Mumbai tonight. Now, in just the last 1 day, we've looked at prohibition in we're looking at possible prohibition in 2 states. Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has said the highway liquor ban actually gave him the idea to crack down on liquor shops along the Narmada River. And today, in just a short while earlier, Chief Minister Raman Singh has said Chhattisgarh could follow suit, and almost immediately smaller villages in Chhattisgarh will go dry. Also, we now hear that the government is drafting a questionnaire for hotels and restaurants seeking to assess the quantity of food a customer should be served and asking them to disclose portions. Let me go across to Zorawar Kalra if I can right away. Zorawar, now you're a celebrated chef, owner of signature restaurants. How do you feel about all of this? First it was meat, then there seemed to be this total crackdown on liquor. Now we're seeing a possible hint at, what could be construed as food censorship.
All I can say is that it's a very interesting time to be a part of the Indian F&B industry. It's very interesting indeed. I think somebody's got like a target painted behind our back and, people are gunning for it. No, I'm just joking. But, I definitely think that the morality behind a lot of these rulings or a lot of these objectives are fine. They're good. They're good intentions. But like they say, often, the path to even hell is paved by good intentions. But I think what's happening now is that the government wants to take actions that help benefit the larger lot. But honestly, this is really not going to help. By controlling portions in a restaurant, you're not going to be able to save food wastage. Good restaurants like mine and other good restaurants, we have low wastage anyway because it's a loss to the company, so there's not much wastage. But let me give you an example. Let me give you a scenario where you're holding a catering party, you're holding a wedding, you got 500 people invited, and now suddenly the government decides that we're going to ration the food of your guests that are coming for your wedding feast. Yes. So they're going to say, okay, only 2 chapatis per guest. what happens there? What if somebody wants to eat extra? So if he makes more than 1,000 chapatis for those 500 people, what happens? Does he get penalized? Does he get his license taken away? What happens? I think that it's absolutely a little bit absurd to think that by preventing, by having some kind of a portion control, by defining the amount of food that a restaurant or hotel can serve, you can actually alleviate, food wastage, which is in some way linked to malnutrition and just the state of affairs that a lot of people in our country are going without food. I think the government has to take the onus of this. They cannot shift the onus onto restaurants. There are better ways of doing it. They can make packing the food that people are consuming mandatory by the restaurants. So packing it, a lot of the people patronize the restaurants, they pack their food. They either consume it the next day or they give it to people. If it's untouched and it's safe, they give it to poor people. It's often given to domestic help at home, people on the way, just needy people, kids, all of that kind of stuff. We very often go and give away some of our food to orphanages as a proactive thing. You can always set up these centers, like there are soup kitchens in New York and other places. Yeah, there are soup kitchens in New York. I mean, look at what happens there. Restaurants give away food and the homeless come to a center that is run by the government, by the taxpayer, and they eat food, which is a very basic human thing. I think it is unfair in the 21st century.
Are you making the point that, leave it up to the hotels and the restaurants to tackle this suitably in the best way possible for them, whether it's, letting guests take their packed food away, whether it's, taking this food, donating them to organizations which will then make sure that this reaches the right place. Just leave it up to the hotels and restaurants. Why have the government, ask restaurants to disclose their portions or try some kind of standardization? All right. Fair point. I want to take that across to Shaina NC joining us.
The intention is good. It's not going to work.
Right. Shaina, in the last 24 hours, we have heard the chief ministers of 2 BJP-ruled states now saying they want to implement phased prohibition. Now the food minister also says we must, hotels and restaurants must disclose portion sizes. Even before he talks about standardization or controlling portions, he's certainly very categorically, in the soundbite that we played out just before you joined us, said that hotels and restaurants will be now asked to fill up a questionnaire, and he is saying that they must disclose portions, and this is in the interest of consumers. Now, if that is the only bit that the government is wanting to do, even that, many could say, is interference at a level, and why should the government get into this in any case? How do you respond?
Ankita, first and foremost, this is not food censorship. So let's not sensationalize or try to trivialize the debate. What is the Prime Minister talking about? He's saying that why waste food when we are a poor country and we can give so much to the poor. Now, in a country like India, you will concede that in restaurants, when there is leftover food, we have so much of this sacha food and jhuta food or jhuta haath lagaya, so we will not touch it, or if somebody has eaten it, we will not eat leftovers. So yes, there could be some kind of a conscious decision to see that the proportions that you are serving are not wasted. Having said that, I think there's so many good Samaritans reading about these young entrepreneurs who are actually taking all the leftover food. I mean, I think we must applaud the spirit of this food helpline, which is going to actually take wasted food at weddings, at ostentatious celebrations, at temples, at local functions, at restaurants, and then give it to the homeless and the needy. And especially in a country like India, let's treat this as an example and an innovative thought. What is the Prime Minister saying? He is saying that if you have food portions which are wasted, and because nobody is going to consume it, why not give it to the poor? And the larger thought is that if you take even countries in Africa, I was in Kenya and I was amazed to see even the richest of rich people say that whatever they order in a restaurant, they do not waste.
Shaina, if I may,
they understand the value of.
If I may, no one is taking away from the argument that of course food mustn't be wasted. I think we're all absolutely on the same page over here. We're asking the limited question.
Absolutely.
Should the food minister be talking in terms of a questionnaire? Yeah. Should he say we would be even exploring a possible legal provision which will make it incumbent upon hotels and restaurants to disclose portions? Should this be construed as government interference or not? Now, Anubhav Pal, as a foodie, as a habitué at restaurants. Now, we can regulate portions and shut liquor shops. Can you regulate appetite or thirst?
You know, I think, Ankita, just the idea that food wastage is associated with restaurants makes it seem a bit bizarre. I think what had happened is the Honorable Minister probably went out for a meal and he was served more prawns than he could consume. And there was a direct correlation to hunger in the country. It's a lovely thought, right? But I think that the government can go even further. Now, this may seem like satire, but hear me out. I think why just limit it to restaurants? Why not limit, the proportion you can serve food at home also? So if a husband has been served 3 rotis and he's allowed 2, someone should be promptly arrested. I think that if there should be a mandatory rule that says you should bring in at least 2 strangers and eat with them who are not as privileged as you. You know, if you're going to make rules like that, then go all the way is my only request, right? Restaurants and hotels have profitability as a margin. I don't think they're making tons of food. I don't think they're making a lot of food to waste and give away. But I think that if you want to do a gesture, then do something as insane as that. Of course, it's going to sound insane, but it's going to fulfill what it is that you need, which is to get rich people to share food with poor people. But making a restaurant fill out a questionnaire, that doesn't solve any problem. I mean, what are you going to say, what are restaurants going to say in the future? You know, if you say, I want to order a lot of biryani, the restaurants will say, no, we can't give it to you because our head chef will be arrested. That seems quite ridiculous if you think about it.
All right. Zorawar, would you agree that, this entire
how do you define
project over here seems to be impractical at the very least? Zorawar?
Yeah. Sorry, that was to me? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah, so, I'll tell you what, how do you define appetites? So we have restaurants all over parts of the country. We have in Bangalore, in Bombay, in North India, we had in Chandigarh, and appetites vary. Same portion of dal, for example, might be considered apt for Delhi, will be considered too large for Bombay, extremely large for Bangalore, and maybe considered small for Chandigarh, for example. So how do you define that? And who defines how much you should eat? I mean, I think the whole goal of saving or rather, preventing the food wastage through restaurants and hotels is wrong, because all restaurants and hotels are for-profit centers, right? The goal of any good restaurant or any company is to reduce the wastage and spoilages. So if the spoilage is anywhere less than 1%, what are you going to achieve by restricting portion sizes? If a person wants to order more, he'll order 2. And the consumer will suffer, because let me tell you, if I have to make the same dish in 2 different plates, the costs go up. The cost of manpower, the time associated with preparing that dish, the garnishes, the plates, the washing, everything else adds up. The consumer will end up paying more if portions come down. And, let's talk about rice. For example, I have my wife who eats a lot of rice. I cannot eat rice. I can only eat 2 chapatis, but I can eat maybe 2 bites of rice, but I can eat 5 chapatis. So how do you ration that?
So appetites differ, and what is a small portion for somebody could be a large portion for somebody else. We completely take your point, and in more specialized restaurants where perhaps you have small plates and other new concepts in that sense, how do you try and give any kind of uniform description that will sort of satisfy the consumer? But yes, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, China, but I want to pick up on...
come in?
Yes. China, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but I'm going to raise something that you brought up, the fact that there are many initiatives now by people to make sure that food does not get spoiled. We also have on the program with us tonight Kuldeep Nar, who is the founder of a unique initiative, foodbanking.org, that looks at preventing food wastage. Now, how do you do that, Kuldeep? And, tell us a little more about that. But also, do you think that by targeting hotels and restaurants, we're looking at the problem of food wastage in the wrong way?
Right, absolutely. Thanks, Ankita. And I think one of the first things is I truly agree that we're looking at it in the wrong way. We've been feeding over 15,000 people every day across 10 cities, and the food waste that comes out from hotels or corporate canteens, etc., that's not sustainable. And the most important point over there is the food safety is always a concern. the meals that are cooked, they need to be served within 4 hours, otherwise they go bad. So let's keep that as a very good focus. And like Shaina mentioned, that there is a lot of discussion going on and there needs to be a lot of innovation to be thought through. But this needs a lot of thought, I think, in terms of food safety as a core focus. And the thumb rule is very simple. Do we want to give food that we'll eat as well? Right. I think that's very important to see. Beyond which, I think we're just looking at the food waste problem in the wrong way. As the discussion started today with the minister, because when Prime Minister Modi did talk about food waste, the thought is that there's so much food waste from farmer to plate. It's not from pot to plate. The farmer to plate food problem and food waste problem is a larger problem that needs to be solved. And I think a lot of and the use of technology that he was lauding during the Mann Ki Baat, and the thought of how we can look at warehousing, processing, etc., is what will help solve this problem, and not looking at stopgap approaches with hotels. And you know, over time, this is going to reduce demand from farmers, and we don't want to do that.